Gretchen Halverson, and this is Zhao Olsen. We're from the Minneapolis Institute of Art. We're here today to talk about collaboration. We started to think about this topic after returning from a conference, feeling on the one hand a great sense of excitement, of energy, of thrill to collaborate and contribute to the field. On the other hand, we felt a sense of fatigue, a sense of overwhelming knowing that the day-to-day work might get in the way. How might we work against this cycle? How can we keep the post-conference momentum going when we leave? How can we think about small collaborative efforts as a means to get there? We'd like to start with a story.
So it was a few years ago that we were rebuilding our collections website. We wanted it to... Mike, is it good? Okay. We wanted to rebuild our collections website a few years ago, and we wanted the search to be really fast. We wanted it to be really deeply browsable and really showcase the information on all the artworks that we hold in our museum. We got those core goals mostly built and things were up and running, and then we were in a meeting trying to figure out what do we still need. We came up with a few ideas, and one of those was that we needed a way to show the relative size of all our artworks and give a quick visual idea of how big or small something is. We didn't quite know how to do this or where to go from there, so we wrote it down. It was on our to-do list, and we waited to come up with a concrete next action. Luckily, right around this time, there was a blog post from Good Form and Spectacle, which is a design agency based in London that works with cultural heritage. And they were working on a project for the British Museum, and they had built a dimension drawer, which draws that nice volumetric box next to a bright yellow tennis ball. And it does a really good job of showing how big or small something is against the universal reference point. They wrote up their project, they posted all of the code openly, and so it only really took a day or two to dive in and adapt what they did to work with our collection. We generated 150,000 dimension drawings. We put them into our collection site, and it worked great. It was simple. We sent a note of thanks back to London, and they were overjoyed to see their project getting used. We really didn't expect to get the feedback that we did get, though. It generated a lot of interest from our visitors and even became a point of reference in the field. You can see Chad from St. Louis Museum of Art here tweeting out how this is a good example of how to do it on the website. But we don't deserve too much credit for this. It all goes back to George Oates and Frankie Roberto, who were two collaborators in London that worked on this project. We just found it luckily at the right time and were able to implement it quickly and with little investment.
So this example illustrates that collaboration can happen not just in big, elaborate ways, but in small, organic ones too. The effort didn't occur over months and months. It didn't require deep budgets. It didn't require layers of approval. Rather, it was small. It was measured. But it was also significant. We'd like to ask that we value those small contributions, those small collaborative efforts, just as much as we value the big ones.
And to take a step back, this isn't new. This isn't a great, wonderful idea that we've invented. This has been happening for a long time, and it's happening more and more. We, the two of us, aren't necessarily even that good at it. So I want to take a moment to thank everybody who's here in this room who professionally engages through blogging or on social media or by attending conferences like these. I think it's a really, really generous gesture for all of us to be here. And it all leads us into a tighter-knit community, and by sharing our experiences and talking about the work we do, we're taking small steps forward.
So this might just seem like common sense, it might be obvious, but perhaps we acknowledge that simple can sometimes be hard, and practice makes perfect, and small can be significant. So how do we get there? Number one, talk about your work. GitHub, Slack channels, blogs, emails, coffees. Talk about what's working and what's not working. Where do you need help? And where might you have an opportunity to share your work?
There are almost too many opportunities to share and to read and listen, but the second most important thing is that we find what other people are talking about or sharing and pay attention to it and really register that within our day-to-day work. Even if it's just a matter of taking 15 minutes a day to follow up with someone, that's the start of bigger efforts in collaboration.
And finally, use it. When you find someone's work, when you're listening to it, think about whether you can use that to solve one of your own problems. Save a week's worth of work and get that quick win.
So we think these are some things that we can do to keep the ball rolling, make it maybe roll a little bit faster. I'm not saying that everyone should go home and start a blog on Monday or write a presentation for the next conference cycle, but what can we find that's really a small gesture, a little thing that might make a big difference somewhere in the future?
What can you commit to today? Dedicate yourself to finding the value in those small collaborative moments, and be hopeful that those moments matter. Thank you.